Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the panel on advancing corporate sustainability reporting. We all know that sustainability reporting has been around for decades. We know that companies have used reporting for various reasons, but since recently, it has become a very important tool for implementing sustainability agenda into companies. More recently, European Commission has prepared a very, very ambitious package on reporting, which has changed and is changing the way corporates, but also financial institutions are going to do business. How it's going to impact us, and is it going to become supportive for developing sustainability agenda, or it's going to create additional burden and costs for companies, we will hear in today's discussion. This panel was organized by the Core Platform from Malta, Croatian Business Council for Sustainable Development, Hungarian Business Leaders Forum, and Impronta Etica from Italy. We have some keynote speakers today, and then we will have a lively discussion. I invite all of you who are listening to the discussion to use the live discussion option, where you will find an open poll with 3 questions, and you are welcome to fill them in. We will come back to the results of the poll towards the end of the session. And also you can use a questions option, and you can ask questions that you would like our participants, our panelists to answer. We will also come back to your questions towards the end of the panel. But let me start by introducing our first keynote speaker, Mr. Stefano Zambion, who is professor of accounting and business economics at the University of Ferrara, Italy. Stefano has been a visiting professor at various universities throughout the world, such as Tokyo, New York University, New Zealand, Germany, and so on. He has over 120 publications in books and international scientific journals. But most of all, Mr. Zambion is here today as a Secretary General of Italian Foundation for Business Reporting, IBRD. Mr. Stefano will tell us about how this new legislative framework is impacting corporates and financial institutions. Mr. Stefano, the floor is yours.
Eliana, thank you very much for such a kind presentation. I see John Berrigan that joined us. So if you want, we can still switch just to ask you for be fair.
We could if the technical support will follow us. So I'm assuming that. Okay. Thank you so much, Stefano. In that case, I welcome Mr. John Berrigan, and after a short introduction, I will ask him to take the floor first. So Mr. Berrigan is Director General at Directorate General for Financial Stability, Financial Services and Capital Market Union of the European Commission. DG FISMA is responsible for EU-level policy making and legislative initiatives for financial sector, including banking union, capital markets, and so on. Mr. Berrigan has been with the Commission since the mid-80s, mostly working on financial sector issues. So Mr. Berrigan has a lot of experience in the financial sector legislative framework of the European Commission, and he will tell us about the new regulatory framework, which includes reporting, but also some obligations for financial sector institutions. So, Mr. Berrigan, please take the floor and introduce us to this legislative framework we are dealing with. Oh, Lord. Okay. So, Stefano, maybe you should start first instead. Sorry about that.
No problem. I just wanted to try to respect the order. I hope that John Berrigan will not have something against me after. I just thank you very much for being invited here. It's a great pleasure and honor to speak at this European SDG Summit organized by CSR Europe together with the National Association, and thank in particular Hungarian Association and of course the Impronta Etica. Just in terms of, I would like just to make sure everybody's seeing the screen, because I'm not, but I hope that I don't need to share the screen. I think you see my screen already. Okay, so okay, just to make sure, because it's difficult for me to see what is written. Anyway, so let's start. The aim of the speech. Let's move to the second slide, please. The aim of the speech is to provide, of course, some observations, some reflections about the potential consequences for companies about the introduction of the proposed new European Directive on Sustainability Reporting. I think it's personally, I think it's a major shift, of course, in the company reporting. It's a European-based revolution, I would say, because. But it's what I would like to stress. It takes place very much mainly through new reporting, disclosure, and classification requirements, which to some extent is a novelty. It's not completely new, but clearly the extent to which reporting, disclosure, and classification take, the role they have, it's clearly important. Next, please. What is the company status quo? I don't want to be pessimistic, but just not talking about large companies, of course, but many companies in Europe do not understand so far the risks and the business implications of climate change and social inequalities. Top people in the CEOs, CFOs, COOs don't necessarily understand and prepare to face the sustainability reporting requirements, sustainability in general, and the new reporting requirements coming along, and also they're not necessarily prepared also to face the bank lending practices that are going to change through the Green Deal and of course the regulation regarding banks and banks lending. Board members, the boards are very often not very competent about this. On this area about sustainability, and to use the data coming related to sustainability. Company strategy does not consider it then, not surprisingly, does not consider systematically and holistically all the challenges. And the view about value creation is about financial value creation. So it's a restricted, traditional, classical view of value creation. And this, of course, creates also room for opportunistic behaviors and various types of washings, not only greenwashing, but also sustainability washing, social washing, and also value washing. So this is also this situation, which is not necessarily, as I said, on average or in general, is not necessarily so happy, shall we say. Also the bonuses paid to managers very often are based only on financial parameters, and the budgets and decisions of companies are based on financial and economic data. Nothing wrong, but not enough. So that is a bit of a pessimistic. Okay, I would accept that view, but especially if we move from the large companies to medium and small size, this is clearly the situation. Next, please. Of course, they say the proposed directive, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, as I said, let me stress again, is a proposed directive willing probably to be accepted, to be approved by the parliaments, the European authorities at the beginning of 2022. Let's probably, after me, John Barringham clearly will be more authoritative on this. There are many important innovations. new terminology, sustainability reporting. The reporting areas and reporting issues are much more enlarged to what has been so far with the Non-Financial Reporting Directive approved in 2014. The scope of application goes down to 250 employees and above. Now is 500 employees, so it's the half. Of course, there will be European standards for sustainability reporting elaborated by EFRAG and will be enacted legally by the European Commission. There's a double materiality principle. The management report will be central for sustainability data because sustainability reporting will be lodged inside the management report. For the first time, and I think this is a major shift, and an applaud to European Commission on that, intangibles will need to be measured, monitored, and disclosed. The digitization of the data, there will be a European single access point, ESEF, and there will be also mandatory audit for all this sustainability data with a beginning of a limited assurance type of thing, but with to become a reasonable assurance over time. So these are some of the main innovations, which are really important. And clearly, the potential innovations for companies are very large. Let me just list some of them. Clearly, first of all, the new directive could propose a new awareness, could shed a new awareness on non-financial risks to which many companies are exposed to. And clearly, this awareness creates also better understanding and a rethinking of the impact of the company on environment, territories, and communities. So the two things, of course, go hand in hand. This also the directive may also foster a new perception of value creation, which is not necessarily only financially linked to financial data. We understand the concept of profit. The new directive will probably help companies visualize and manage their hidden asset, the hidden wealth of companies, which is based on intangibles, what is not appearing on the balance sheet, on the asset and liabilities of the companies. And of course, the new directive may also foster a new learning about how to calculate different ways to understand the value added by the company to the context, the natural and social context, also in a digital format. Also, this is another important element. And finally, the potential innovation that can be generated by the new directive also is a new attitude towards the reliability, comparability of sustainability data in order to avoid greenwashing and to give more credibility and robustness to this data. So these are all potential innovations. Of course, we're talking still about a proposal, but I can already see some of this come true possibly in the near future. Of course, next, please. Talking about challenges, opportunities. Talking about challenges and opportunities. Of course, all these innovations, all these positive things I've been talking to, do not come, automatically. But we all know that this will, in order to get these innovations that are desirable, of course, we need some dramatic shifts in some of the basic elements of companies' life. Clearly, there's a need for an adaptation, a revisitation of business models, because, of course, sustainability linked innovations all have to be consistent with a new, different concept of business model, circular economy, with the cost-saving practices, business process reengineering for enhancing productivity, green procurement. So they are all expressions that nowadays are very often, we can hear very often, in the debates, in public debates. But of course, this is not a simple thing to do, especially if a company is not a large company. Also, if it's a large, it's not easy. But when you are not large, you have less resources. Of course, another challenge for a company is to integrate financial and non-financial data. When companies decide assess investments, they also have to take into account not only financial returns, which is a capital budgeting, standard capital budgeting procedures, but they also have to take into account the fact that there are new company figures that are sustainability data. And of course, they have to train their own professional, their own staff about how to deal with financial, especially non-financial data. There's a new digital language, of course, that to be learned. There's an organizational sensitivity to be raised. And of course, this is going to produce or should produce a managerial and cultural discontinuity in organizations. And also the ecosystem around the company needs to be shifted, needs to be changed. Let's think about professionals, chartered accountants, the consumers that will need them more. They're already in a good way in this respect to look differently at the products, and also banking. The relationship with banks needs to change from a company perspective. This is all true, as I said, is even truer for non-listed SMEs. We know that listed SMEs after 6 years will be subject to the new regulations that will be put forward by the new directive proposal. But the non-listed SMEs will be a real challenge for the European context. So this is even, all the challenges I just mentioned will become really huge mountains for some of these SMEs. Next, please. I would like also to remind everybody the role in this dramatic change that we're going to see also as a consequence of the new European Commission requirements and European Parliament requirements and the directive we're talking about. I would also to recall the important role that, in my view, will have intermediate bodies. I use this expression, which is willingly a little bit ambiguous, because what is an intermediate body? All these bodies that work in the society at an international and national level that somehow are a bit of a link between the regulators and the companies and the social and professional context. So for instance, CSR Europe clearly is an intermediate body, but also at the national level, let's look at Italy, it becomes quite natural for me, Impronta Etica, and also the Italian Foundation for Business Reporting that I represent as a Secretary General. Next, please. Why I'm saying that these intermediate bodies can be helpful in this important shift, because the regulation is important, but of course, the consequences will be even more important. Let's look at the IBR Foundation. Sorry, I can't see very well the slide. It's about the IBR Foundation. Can you please confirm? Because it's a bit small, I see. Yeah, okay. What the IBR Foundation is doing is being founded in 2019. It is an Italian foundation, legally recognized, about 70 members, operating only in the public interest. It's an internationally endorsed foundation, GRI, Value Reporting Foundation, Wiki Network, and so on, which collaborates very strictly both with EFRAG at the European level and also with the Value Reporting Foundation at an international level. The purpose of this foundation is exactly that you're looking for, in a sense, because it is elaboration of technical reporting principles and guidances in the area of business reporting, non-financial information, sustainability, and integrated reports. And of course, this offers the possibility basically for companies and professionals to find a reference point in the Italian national context to help somehow the reporting transition. Next, please. These are our guidance, studies and guidances. You probably see, some of them are in Italian, some of them are in English. In particular, next, please, I would like to show you This has been a particularly impactful guidance as about how to apply integrated reporting for SMEs. It's an implementation guidance that found also the International Federation of Accountants found particularly interesting. We presented officially this guidance together. It's in Italian and in English. It's for free, of course, in the website of the Italian Foundation for Business Reporting, or IBR. Next, please. What we did is to run the Italian Congress, the fourth Italian Congress 6 months ago, basically, with 33 national and international speakers, with the European Commission, ESMA, EFRAG, Value Reporting Foundation, IFRS Foundation, TCFD, CONSOB with the Italian Stock Exchange regulator, just to connect, the idea is just to connect the Italian context together with the international context and the Italian stakeholders, between themselves, because that is also important we think important for the transition. Next, please. What we're working on, and after we go into conclusions, we're working on performance measurement and SDGs. We're working on insolvency prediction of company solvency prediction using non-financial information. We're talking about how you operationalize double materiality in sustainability reporting. And we're talking about executive compensation and sustainability data, biodiversity and corporate reporting. We have an observatory on benefit corporations, together with the Italian Association of Benefit Corporations. And of course, we're collaborating strictly, as I said, with EFRAG. We have 3 persons working for IBR that are in the technical secretariat of EFRAG for the new sustainability reporting standards. Next, please. So let's conclude, I think, on time, possibly. So there are 4 messages. The CSRD proposal, together with the green taxonomy and, of course, the sustainable finance disclosure regulation, SFDR, represents a quantum leap forward for European companies, for investors, for banks. We need to stress this in a very clear way. Not much time to deploy all this revolution. And this, of course, there are numerous challenges, as I tried to point out, coming from inside a company, in the ecosystem of companies, because companies need to transform these challenges in benefits and opportunities. And special support will be needed for small and medium enterprises and various type and this type and companies working also on the value chains. In this respect, personally, I think that there will be a crucial role not only for the legislation, but also for intermediate bodies in making this change happen in the professional and cultural perspective. From this point of view, IBR would like to offer an possible example at the European level for implementing this change. Final slide, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Stefano. This was a really informative presentation. What I heard is that we actually are talking about the whole new value system for the companies, which includes a completely different setting, different organizational culture, and different managerial approach. And let's hope our management boards of our corporates are ready for this new challenge. We will hear about this later on in our discussion. Since Mr. Berrigan finally managed to join, I will, and I already introduced him, I will not spend much time, but saying that Mr. Berrigan is Director General of DG TISMA, in charge of financial legislation within European Commission. Mr. Berrigan will tell us more about legislation and new requirements set up for financial institutions, but also for corporates in terms of reporting. So thank you again, Stefano, and the floor I give to Mr. Berrigan. Mr. Berrigan, hello.
Well, thank you very much, and I apologize, but there seem to be some problems getting me into the session, but I've arrived a bit late, so I apologize for that. What I want to do today is just to briefly outline to you the overall strategy we have for sustainable finance, and then how the corporate reporting section fits into that. I shall be as brief as I can, since I've probably kept you all late, but I will try to get through the main points. As you all know, of course, the EU is firmly committed to becoming a sustainable economy, and therefore the goal set out in the European Green Deal is to make the EU climate neutral by 2050, and that's clear, and that's pretty ambitious. So it's therefore clear how the EU's climate targets require the adoption of a holistic approach. So all UE actions, all EU policies must contribute to this climate goal. Now, in line with all the efforts outlined so far, the Commission, of course, in the summer decided to update its sustainable finance strategy. So building on what we did in 2018, the strategy for financing the transition to a sustainable economy consolidates what we have achieved in 2018, but takes into account some developments since then, which are perhaps not so well covered in the strategy. The first is the need for financing the transition from all sectors. So this focus should be on transition. The second is an increased need to be inclusive. So we have to take on board SMEs, particularly smaller SMEs, but also citizens into this action. We need to set the incentives right, and to ensure that the financial sector is resilient, because it plays this key role in helping the real economy transition. And then finally, we use the new updated strategy to outline the global context, where I know, particularly in the area of disclosures, there are concerns about how we're going to articulate what we want to achieve with what our attempts to put in place global standards. So this updated strategy has four main targets. As I said, one is financing transition, and there we want to develop a more supportive framework for intermediary steps in all the sectors, and get around the criticism of this taxonomy, which was one of being binary, that it was either green or not green, but there wasn't enough attention paid to the transition from not being green to being green. The second, this more inclusive and sustainable finance framework, there we are aware that the framework is complex. It is complex because it has to be, but this of course makes it at times inaccessible to smaller players and indeed to individual citizens. So we want to set out a series of measures which are going to make it easier for SMEs in particular to manage the taxonomy process. We want to improve the financial sector's resilience. Here we're doing it in two directions. One, we want to acknowledge the work which has been done by central banks in building the resilience of the system, stress tests, etc. So these famous outside-in risk. But we also want to make sure that we look also at how the system is resilient from the point of view of the investor. And so we limit the risks of greenwashing within the framework. So on the one hand, we consider reviewing the macroprudential toolbox for bank supervisors, and that will ensure that ESG risks are adequately managed through the prudential frameworks for banks, insurers, etc. So that would include regular stress tests by supervisors, financial institutions. But of course, the transition must happen on all fronts. So financial institutions should also translate EU sustainability goals into their long-term financing strategies, into their decision-making processes, and of course, into their public disclosures. And this includes, of course, further promoting decarbonization, target setting, and transition plans in financing decisions. Moreover, we will monitor the financial sector's progress to meet the climate and environmental goals across the EU, and will assess whether supervisory powers, capabilities, and obligations are fit for purpose in protecting investors and consumers against greenwashing. The last item of this updated strategy, as I said, was fostering our global ambition. So as you know, EU is somewhat in the lead in terms of green, but now we're happy to say others are joining. But we need to use our position in the lead to promote global sustainable discussion more widely. And we do this in two fora. One is in two ways. Firstly, in our interaction with other partners in international fora, like the G20 and the G7. And of course, we have our own international platform for sustainable finance, where we bring together policymakers, not so much to coordinate, but to exchange views and build on best practice. So this brings me then more to where disclosure fits into this broader picture. Now, we are committed to working towards global convergence on standard settings, particularly on taxonomy, but in the context of this discussion, notably in disclosures, while we want to continue to team up with other jurisdictions in the international platform. So our job as policymakers is to set the targets and then design a clear trajectory for the markets. But we have to, bear in mind that there's a dual relationship between the financial system and the environment and society at large. There is both the outside risk inward to the financial system, but there's also the inside out risk from the financial system and corporates towards the wider climate. And this is where this famous double materiality concept comes in. This is the compass that we are using. So the two risks, inside out and outside in, for the EU approach to sustainable finance. So the taxonomy itself, but also the sustainable finance disclosure regulation and the new proposal on corporate sustainability reporting, the CSRD, they're all examples of this double materiality approach. More specifically, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive proposal, that's a key element now of the Green Deal. It will revise and strengthen the sustainability reporting rules for non-financial corporates, according with information needs of market participants and other stakeholders. There will be mandatory EU sustainability reporting standards, which is probably the most important element of the proposal. The development of EU standards will provide, we hope, a rational and cost-effective solution for reporting companies, because we believe the current situation of multiple standards and multiple expectations is not only costly, but also confusing for the sectors. By developing EU sustainability reporting standards, we can create consensus about the information that investors and the wider public, NGOs, and indeed companies can reasonably expect. And we have taken major steps in sustainable finance to enable finance to play its part in the transition to sustainability, and we want to use disclosures as an important element in that activity. Now, EU standards, as included in the CSRD proposal, will help companies to understand how their business model and strategy can be compatible with the transition to a sustainable and climate-neutral economy. They'll provide companies with metrics and indicators to measure the performance and progress in the environmental, social, and governance areas. But to achieve this, EU standards must be coherent with EU's political ambitions and with our existing framework for sustainable finance. And it means that from the beginning, our standards will cover all sustainability topics under a double materiality perspective. So not just climate, but the environmental, biodiversity as well, social and governance as well. And we believe this is the information that financial markets want and ultimately will need. Now, we are mindful that we need global alignment of reporting standards, and many international companies will use the EU standards, but will also have to use standards from other parts of the world as well. And of course, they're rightfully worried about convergence in those standards, or more worried perhaps about divergence and what that would mean. I mean, the best I can say is that we will build on and contribute to global standardization initiatives. So we want to build on what exists and seek as much alignment as possible, but also meeting Europe's specific needs. So that means we see the IFRS Foundation initiative as a baseline, a kind of global baseline on which to build according to our own political priorities and legal frameworks. It's important to note that our own standards already incorporate most of the TCFD principles anyway. So we will see cooperation between global and regional standard setters as a key to assure coherence and interoperability between frameworks. I should say here that I cannot guarantee 100% convergence. I know many companies would like me to do so, but it seems very unlikely. What we need to work for is, an optimal level of convergence. Interoperability, I think, is the word we're now using, that makes this divergence that exists manageable. Our standards will be created by EFRAG, the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group, and that has already established very close technical cooperation with the Global Reporting Initiative and indeed with the IFRS Foundation. There's already, as I said, a lot of common ground here. I've mentioned that we have taken the TCFD recommendations already into our proposal. So we feel that there's scope to develop this global baseline and to deliver a degree of international convergence, which makes the system manageable on a global level. Just to mention another piece that contributes to the EU disclosure framework is the Delegated Act supplementing Article 8 of the Taxonomy Regulation. Now, markets and investors need clear and comparable information, so this is also necessary to prevent greenwashing attempts. These are generally easier in an environment of fragmented information. So again, this Delegated Act sets a level playing field by specifying the content, the methodology, and presentation of information to be disclosed by large financial and non-financial undertakings concerning the share of environmentally sustainable economic activities aligned with the EU taxonomy in their business, investments, or lending activities. This enhanced disclosure will be beneficial for the companies who are disclosing because it will help attract investors to finance their environmentally sustainable activities or indeed their transition towards environmental sustainability. It will also help investors and the public at large to understand the company's trajectory towards environmental sustainability. So, as I said, we have set very ambitious targets. We have set an often complex, but not particularly revolutionary strategy for achieving those objectives: a taxonomy, classification system of what is green, a disclosure regime which covers corporates, intermediaries, and also requires financial advisors, of course, to use that disclosure to the assistance of their investors or end investors. And then we're going to create a set of tools, standards, labels, etc., to help the investor navigate his way around. Within this 3 blocks, disclosure, of course, is a very important element. So therefore, the reporting requirements will be very important. But they fit into this, as I said, broader strategy. I'm aware that we are doing things in a hurry. I'm aware that we've not always brought things out in the right sequence. This is often the way things are when you're working in a hurry. But I think when you see the 3 blocks put together, you can see how the strategy fits and how disclosures fit in to that strategy. We are asking quite a bit of the market. However, we think that although we're asking a lot, leaving the present situation of multiple standards and multiple different reporting requirements out there is not helpful either. So we are ambitious, but we are not ambitious because we simply want to be ambitious. We're ambitious because the target set in the Green Deal, the 2050 carbon neutrality, according to the scientists, is the end date. And also, according to the scientists, we're already late. So we don't really have the time to go more slowly. So I regret that we have to move so fast. I regret that we have to ask the industry so much in terms of the strategy as a whole, but in particular in terms of their reporting requirements. But really, there is no choice here. Maybe I'll stop here and wait for the remainder of the panel. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Berrigan. Thank you for these wonderful messages that you sent. First of all, thank you for recognizing that this is quite a big bite to swallow for businesses and financial institutions in Europe. But thank you also for being so ambitious, because we all, I think, agree that we don't have much time left. I think it's interesting to see that Europe has an ambition to become a global player and to set up a global level playing fields by introducing this framework to the entire planet, so that companies that work on multinational markets will in fact have the same standards. And most of all, I'm happy to see that you have put so much into creating European standards for reporting. We know that GRI has recently published their own standards, so it's good to know that you work together with GRI, and that in fact the standards will make much more clear for the corporates about what to report and how to report. But let's really hear what the remainder of the panel has to say, and how they see all these changes that you are introducing, and are they comfortable with what they're about to be required to do. I will start with Mr. Niccolo Poli. since you have spoken, Mr. Berrigan, so much about financial sector and requirements for financial sector, I think it's very good to start with representative of a bank. Mr. Poli is a CEO of HSBC from Luxembourg. He's been a CEO there since 2018. With the HSBC Group, Mr. Poli is since 2011. And he has excessive experience in financing, working in USA, UK, France, Italy, and so on. Mr. Poli, representing a bank, I will ask you to share with us your opinion about how do you think financial sector will change based on the new legislation that was just presented to us. Mr. Poli?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mirjana, and thank you for inviting me here to speak. It's been great to hear Stefano and John speak about this important topic. Let me perhaps take a step back and try to explain this in my own words in terms of what I think is happening. So if we zoom out a second, in a way, it's a very simple but fundamental change that is required of all of us, and finance in particular, which is finance to date has been dominated by what I would call a risk-reward concept, right? Finance has been all about cash flow, and cash is king. I mean, I had my finance professors drum this in on me, for a long time. Value investing by the famous investors like Buffett was all about free cash flow. All of this has to move, and we need to start integrating impact into this equation. We need to move from risk-reward purely to risk-reward and impact. And it really is, in my view, that simple. But it's fundamental, and it's a very big change. And let me take us through a little bit the journey that we've been on so far to do this, to see where we're at today, and then where we need to go forward. So, when I was back in university, 20 plus years ago, we did study the concepts of negative and positive externalities. We acknowledged this, right? We somehow acknowledged that not all cash flow was the same. Obviously, if you destroyed a rainforest to produce cash flow, that was worse than if you could produce cash flow without destroying the rainforest. But at the end of the day, all of our credit models, all of the decision models, all of the NPV models, everything could only focus on hard numbers and hard dollars. Then at some point, we started to have the roots of what I'd call a social conscious around how do we start incorporating these into banking, into finance. And the concept of the risk appetite and the risk appetite statements came around, and we would start to exclude certain sectors that we deemed not to be that good. So whether that's weapons or gambling or non-sustainable forestry, palm oil, or coal. And we would have this exclusionary approach to it. And that's a bit of a blunt instrument. It was better than not doing anything, but it is a blunt instrument. And let me give an example of why it's blunt. So if there's a technology that made existing coal plants less polluting, should that be excluded or not? And the truth is, it's a complicated equation, because part of you can say, well, the existing coal plants are there to pollute in any case. If you can make it less polluting, that's good. But actually, sometimes this can extend the life of a coal plant. And so even though it's less pollution per annum, the number of annums increases, and so is greater pollution over that life cycle. So this is what we'd call a cradle to grave analysis. And this has brought us on, in many ways, to the concept of greenwashing, which has been mentioned several times on this call, where sometimes, yes, it's greenwashing is about people trying to game the system, but often it's frankly just having different opinions, calculations, or assumptions. Is Tesla green? Depends on what assumptions you make about the source of energy. Is it wind and solar or thermal coal? What assumptions do we make about the lifespan of the lithium-ion batteries, and what happens to those lithium-ion batteries at the end of the life of a car? And let's not forget the 1.5 billion investment they made into Bitcoin. How do you take all of this into account to decide whether Tesla is green or not? So this is the journey that we've been on, from pure financial returns to let's start to try and incorporate impact into this, because I think it's clear by now to everybody that a sustainable dollar is better than an unsustainable dollar. And cash flow isn't king, it's sustainable cash flow that needs to be king. So how do we incorporate this into finance? And John mentioned, or he spoke on the slides around there being some sort of formal objective reporting standards that are audited. And I think we welcome that, because we do need to try and remove some of the subjectivity that is entered into this, right? Imagine if you took the credit worthiness of a nation like Luxembourg, which is where I'm based, and S&P said it's a AAA and Moody's says it's a triple B minus. You'd be very confused because that's a huge gap. And that's a little bit where we're at today with impact, right? Some data analytics that we buy can tell us that Tesla is very green and others can tell us it's not so green. So there's a huge variation and we need to really try and shorten that variation. So this is a journey that we're all on. And I think this is where we have come to today. So we welcome all the regulations. If I look then specifically at how this will impact the bank, it'll impact different lines of businesses in different way. If I look at wholesale banking, which let's say the main product in wholesale banking is lending, it can be relatively straightforward, such as green bonds that are made for very specific projects. They're discrete in nature, like a wind farm or solar panels. And we can provide financing for that, and we can track that what we were expecting to be created is actually created. It gets a little bit harder when we think of just normal lending that isn't project-based, such as should we lend to oil companies, right? Many people say oil companies are bad. They are the biggest polluters, but presumably that's also where the biggest benefit is. But we should lend to them, presumably, again, only if it's going to do good and only if they've committed to doing good and looking at the impact and moving away, transitioning from a carbon-intensive business model to a less carbon-intensive business model. But then how do we track that? How do we make sure and hold them to account that that is what they do? So this, again, is where some of this disclosure comes into play. It helps us do all of this. So we welcome it a lot. If I look at asset management has really been on a journey, similar to that of the finance industry as a whole, where we used to just look at financial investing. No one does it anymore, right? Just the pure returns. Now we have responsible investing, sustainable investing, impact investing, and then even philanthropy. And that's how we look at it internally. Responsible will be around exclusions. Sustainable is going to incorporate some kind of ESG measure. And then impact is going to be talking about a direct measurable impact, often aligned to the SDG 17s. From a regulatory perspective, the framework provided is around an Article 8 and Article 9 funds. And we are incentivized to produce Article 8 and Article 9 funds in Luxembourg as well, because the subscription tax can be reduced from 4 bips all the way down to 1, depending on what portion of the fund is aligned to the articles. So this again is a positive and we welcome it. Again, it's a relatively blunt, but within that we'll have sectors. So we've launched a healthcare fund that is, I believe, in Article 8. And we will have different sectors within that. And then if I look at wealth and private banking, and this is possibly one of the places I'm most excited about, what we need to do is change the conversation that we have with clients from pure return, risk reward and returns and how much money am I making, to talking about what is their carbon footprint or what is the impact of their investments. I mean, how wonderful would that be if we could get to that level of detail with clients and talk to them and say, your carbon footprint is this. These are certain things that you could do about that, about limiting it, in terms of installing solar panels on your summer home or other things. These are rich conversations. And even better, if I look at their investments and say, you've invested in these kind of companies, this is your portfolio, this is currently the impact you make on the SDG 17s. Why don't we, at the same risk return level, optimize your impact? And you tell me where you want it to be. Do you want it on poverty, hunger, well-being, education, clean water, clean energy? Where do you want it? And these are extremely rich conversations. Now, we're not there yet, but this is where we're heading to. So my fundamental message around this is we welcome the change. And it's all about incorporating impact into the financial service and making sure that we don't just do risk reward, but risk, reward, and impact. So it's simple at its core, but profound.
Thank you. Thank you. Obviously, we are talking about non-tangible criteria here. So it's going to make this a conversation which is going to be very deep and very profound. But if I'm not mistaken, you sound very exciting about it. I assume you look forward to this discussion.
For me, yes, 100%. We're at the beginning of a journey and it's going to be painful. And I think John, said mistakes will be made, and he's absolutely right. And it's not going to be as easy as I say, but the outcome, well, number one, we have to mitigate climate change. It's fundamental. We have to do that. So the output of that is key. But two, I think the richness of these conversations have been lacking for a long time, and that's where we need to go. It's so complicated, but digital helps, right? The ability to start measuring some of these things cradle to grave is great. And there's a lot of fintechs out there, and we're starting our own ESG research, and we're getting there in terms of the richness. We're not there yet. But if you fast forward 10 years, I really think the conversation that we're going to be having with our clients of all types, whether that's corporate, private banking, or retail, is going to be much richer. And we're really going to be integrating impact into everything that we do as a bank. So while I might not look forward to the increased regulatory disclosures and other things that I have to do, I absolutely look forward to the future and these kind of conversations and this kind of impact. It's the right way to go.
Thank you. Let me now introduce Mr. István Szabo. Mr. István Szabo is working for KPMG Hungary since 2005. He's developing sustainability practices in Hungary since 2008, and he's been supporting little local clients in all industries in sustainability strategy reporting and assurance. So Mr. Szabo is the right person to tell us with more details about what are the challenges that big companies are facing while reporting, sustainability reporting, and how does he feel the new legislation will change the reporting practices in business. Mr. Szabo.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Let me start with a short reflection what's around us, and we can see that thanks to the European Green Deal related regulations like the SFDR, the taxonomy, and so on, and the increasing international investors' focus on sustainability and recent and visible changes in our climate, ESG boomed this year very significantly, and hopefully the green revolution might come in 2022. So we have a momentum. So all and everybody who are here in this community, so we have the momentum to show how relevant sustainability is and our activities are to the C-level decision makers, investors, and influential business partners like financial institutions. And reporting is a tool to make this happen. So this is my key message here. Thanks to our recent activities with many financial institutions, as already mentioned by the AHBC representative. So one of the greatest challenge in the capital market is actually the availability of reliable data. And actually transparency is driving trust, cheaper and easier access to capital. So this is what we can see right now on the market. I don't know whether you heard about it or not, but KPMG globally has just launched its ESG strategy, in which the international network of professional member firms invest $1.5 billion USD worldwide in the following 3 years to embed ESG into the core business and support clients to make this transition and to face these challenges, not just from reporting, but also from decarbonization, social inclusion, and other governance-related issues. It hasn't started today or yesterday, but several decades ago. So the sustainability practice I'm supporting for more than 10 years has started surveying the leading practices all around the world in 1993. And actually we launched our 11th edition of the KPMG survey of sustainability reporting, in which we have lots of interesting information on ESG, and this is publicly available information. So if you are interested, you can have an easy download. But I'd like to highlight a couple of interesting results now. And what are these key highlights? 80% of leading companies in the surveyed countries now report on sustainability, and this is 95% in the global Fortune top 250 companies. So the question is not anymore about who is reporting or who not, but what is the reporting quality about. So the quality is in focus. Regarding the big regions competition, Europe is third, unfortunately, only after Asia-Pacific and North America. So this is flat and not really increasing, or hasn't been increased in the past few years. So it's a kind of message that other regions are ahead of us in terms of transparency. And as already mentioned, the quality is in focus. So what drives quality? We believe that the standardization, so application of standards definitely should help us in this. And we can see based on this survey that the GRI remains the dominant global standard for sustainability reporting. 76% of the global Fortune 250 companies report against the GRI. And we can see other standards which can make this exercise more and more difficult, but still GRI is a kind of golden reporting standard. What else can enhance the quality? We believe that the third-party independent assurance can help this. We have already seen and you have already heard that the greenwashing is emerging. The more and more money is flowing into this area, the higher the probability we have that someone tries to report more as this is in reality. So 71% applies third-party assurance among the global Fortune 250, but the room for national 100 leading companies is still very huge. And this conference is also about SDGs. So we have a couple of messages towards SDGs, and we can see that a significant majority of companies, like 70%, now connect their business activities with the SDGs, which is, let's say, positive. But on the other side, we can also see that this is sometimes considered as SDG bingo. Sorry to say that, but most of the companies tend to report almost all SDGs instead of focusing on the most relevant ones. Furthermore, SDG reporting is often unbalanced and disconnected from business goals. We could identify 10 or 15% only in which there are some negative or not that favorable information, how certain companies' information are related to certain selected SDGs and sub-objectives, which is not to be very, very realistic. In terms of SDGs, economic growth, climate change, and responsible consumption are the most frequently prioritized by businesses. And surprisingly, biodiversity is, or biodiversity related SDGs are the least commonly prioritized goals. However, 50% of the global GDP is highly dependent on natural resources. And please don't forget that less than 9% of the global economy is circularized. So this is a huge challenge that we can face in terms of reporting. As already mentioned, GRI is the golden standard, but there are lots of other reporting standards available, and this is getting more and more complex. Roughly 1 year ago, with the World Economic Forum, KPMG developed a metrics on stakeholder capitalism. Maybe you have already heard about this. This is also publicly available, so you can have an easy access to check what could I apply if I have to meet certain different reporting standards. And this could also help to make this exercise a little bit more easier. So this is also available. And if you would like to take an example, KPMG also reported against of this, and this is called our impact plan and our impact report. So this is publicly available again. Thanks to this new EU level regulations and expectations, what we can expect on the market to have an increase of companies that will provide information on non-financial performance. And we believe that this is a kind of tool to drive the sustainable performance, because this creates a kind of vacuum. So if you don't report anything, or if you don't report progress, the level of trust is not increasing. And this is one of the key objectives to build trust among your stakeholders, and also use the sustainability reporting as a management tool to improve your sustainability performance over the time. And this is what can be very, very important from a business point of view. This is what I wanted to share, and if we have additional time, I would like to give some further insights into our projects.
Thank you so much, István. We obviously see that reporting is now finally becoming a tool to help companies achieve sustainability. It's not only about reporting anymore, it's about the quality of the data. It's about trust, which you mentioned, which I think is a very important word. With the new customers, new young generation, with the digitalization and globalization, I think that trust can be lost very quickly unless invested too. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you later. Now I think it's a good time to hear about experience of the company, which is on the two ends of the chain. It's a company, but it's also an investor. So now I'll introduce Julia. Julia Balugani is a sustainability manager from Unipol Gruppo. She has 17 experience in supporting multinational companies in creating sustainability strategies. And now she's working with Unipol since 2018. And basically she deals with planning and execution of sustainability strategies, ESG, risk management, and similar. So Julia, how will you inline your reporting as a company with your reporting as an investor? Do you see this process to be too complicated?
Yeah. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. So, as we saw in the previous presentations, data availability, reliability, comparability are preconditions for the effective implementation of the ambitious EU plan for the sustainable transition. And these topics, availability, reliability, comparability, have always been the mission and the challenge of corporate non-financial reporting. So we are expecting a very lively and complex period with these challenges we have to face. So at Unipol Group, as you told, we have the opportunity to see and live this moment from a double perspective, because yes, on one side, we wear the hat of the issuer or the corporate that has to provide information. And on the other one, we are institutional investors in need for information. And I think in that position, we can fully understand different needs, levers, and even trade-offs that have to be managed. So if I put on the hat of the company, the issuer, a focal challenge for us is to understand and fulfill the expectation of our stakeholders in terms of information provided, and at the same time we need and we want to be able to effectively represent what the characteristics of the company are. So for Unipol, this challenge is reflected in our integrated reporting that we draw up regarding to a set of standards, because we want to fulfill expectation and to represent our unique model of share value creation. So we follow integrated reporting framework, we follow GRI standards for our KPIs, we follow TCFD recommendations, because we know that climate change is the main, the first issues interesting our stakeholders. We follow the guidelines from EU Commission, both the general ones and the specific on climate reporting, because we think that double materiality is fundamental. So it's a very complex model. In this way, we think we are giving a good representation of our share value creation model, and we think we fulfill expectation, but it's expensive in terms of efforts, in terms of resources, and it will become more and more expensive year by year, because expectation is growing fast, and we know that we probably have some issue in terms of general comparability. Moreover, two of these frameworks are changing or have changed, the integrated reporting framework, the GRI, and this will have some huge impact, for instance, in materiality definition. So as a reporting company, we have to manage a wide complexity with the need to get simple and clear results. And if I put on the hat of the investor, I know that I have a strong need of highly standardized information, like taxonomy eligibility and alignment, or the 14 KPIs I will be requested to report in accordance with Regulation 2088 and its regulatory technical standards. So here, as an investor, the risk is to be very focused on compliance and to lose something about effective integration of ESG value in investment decision. Of course, the risk is higher if you are not a very big and structured institutional investor. So this is a quite complex context, and in all this complexity, we all are waiting for the regulatory evolution and the changes that the CSRD will bring in the area of sustainability reporting. I admit that I have a rather high expectation about this new regulation, because I believe I think the new regulatory system is set up. I believe it could make a contribution in resolving the main limits we see now, both on business side and on the investor side, because the definition of a standard should bring a significant step forward in terms of comparability and consistency of reports. And on the other side, the fact that the standard will be on 3 levels, one of which is the sector specific, and one of these, above all, I think, is company specific, could leave adequate space for a representation of the company's way of creating value. So I think that also I think the introduction of intangibles will also make an interesting contribution in representation of creating value. So I think that this will be a complex period, but the alignment won't be too much complex. I think I'm optimistic. We, as a Unipol Group, of course, we are ready to take up the new reporting challenges as a company and as an investor. And we hope all the companies and investors will strive to take the best out of the mandatory rules, because as a long reporting company, we know very well that reporting is not just reporting at the end of a process, is a key step of a company's transformation process, and frequently could be a trigger of evolution opportunities. So we are looking forward for this evolution in all the system.
Thank you, Julia. So I'm hearing that actually you are welcoming standardized information, and it will actually make everyone's job easier. Thank you so much. I will give floor now to Ms. Merica Pletikosic. Dobar dan, Merice. She's Sustainability Manager at Cemex Croatia. Cemex is a cement company. And Merica has PhD in Information and Communication Sciences. She has been working in cement industry since 2001. Before that, she was with State Environmental Administration. She does education and science. And in total, she has 30 years of experience in this profession. And Merica will tell us a little bit about what is experience and position of large industries regarding this new legislation, having in mind that companies who are already in ETS system have aligned with the environmental standards sooner and faster than other companies. So, Merica, how does this new legislation impact your industry and your company?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Mirjana, for invitations for today. I can say regarding Cemex Croatia experience on sustainability report that we as Cemex Croatia has been reporting on sustainability for more than 10 years. But at the corporate level, our group, such a practice is even longer than Croatia. Also at the corporate level of CEMEX Global for several years, now it has been publishing an integrated sustainability report. So this shows that there is no differences between our sustainability strategy and business strategy. Sustainability is at the core of the CEMEX business, and all our reports, but also all our activities every day reflect that. Now, in this moment, we are very committed and support to fulfill of our European Union climate change policy goals with the Green Deal by 2030, with CO2 reduction up to 55%, as well as to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. We want to become a leader in the cement industry in decarbonization and circular economy. For this, I can say ambition reason. Given that we are facing a challenging period, we are confident that our sustainability report, with our efforts, will help us make important company decisions for the future. So the sustainability report is in the CEMEX company standard, and we will continue to report in the future. Also, I want to inform you very shortly regarding the methodology what we used in the meantime. Back in the last 10 years, we have been reporting according to the methodologies on the Global Reporting Initiative, first according to the G3, G3.1 and G4 guidelines, and now according to the GRI standards. Given that the new directive provides for the introduced of Europe reporting standard, it will be interesting to see how and how much these methodologies will differ and how much they will overlap. We can assume that the Europe Financial Reporting Advisory Group, which is developing a new standard in cooperation with GRI, will follow these solutions that already exist to make it easier for companies that already report, but also for these that are just starting to do it as simple as possible. So also I can say that the benefit of reporting for the company, in my experience, are great. The report is a manual tool, good manual tool, because in addition to looking back, it is also given an overview of the goals set and the progress made over the periods. Also, some of the benefits include create a corporate reputation, which is very important for transparency or building open relationship with all stakeholders, such as customers, employees, or local communities. Last but not least, regarding the benefit, I can say that reports can help companies better manage the risk, which is also very important, which we will agree is extremely important in the world of the change we live today. And I can say all of us know that the pandemic is the best example of this. So as planned decarbonization and climate change harmonization for the, I can say, future Europe makeover cleaning in industry. So Croatia, CEMEX Croatia, regarding some, I can say, challenges and the opinion regarding new requirements, I can say that when it comes to challenge, the new directive will cover significantly more companies than it has had to report to date, almost 50,000. We know that many of them will, for the first time, face demands to explain how they approach managing their environmental and social impacts. Some of them now operate without looking at their non-financial impact, do not have sustainability strategy, and do not deal with this aspect of business. Many have some aspect of impact management, such as, for example, certified management system, but may not consider sustainability at the strategy level. They will not only have to report how they manage it or why they do not manage it, but for them, this process will be extremely demanding because it will force them to change the completely business strategy and I can say business paradigm. Many companies also and interest groups are now resisting the demands placed on them by the new reporting directive, and this is understandable. It will take a lot of resource for them and time for those who do not meet the set requirements. We have a completely different view for us in CEMEX. These requirements are welcome for us because they create the rules of the game for the whole European Union economy, according to which we have been playing for a long time. I believe it won't be long before new companies that joined us in reporting system realize the many benefits it has on their own long-term sustainability, regardless of the regulations. I hope that on the end, most of this company will have good experience regarding using the new requirements and also will have a good benefit for this reporting system. It was short for my side.
Thank you, Merica. I have to say that we have a wonderful audience. We have over 170 participants, which is more than double than most of the roundtables that I've taken a look prior to this. This audience is also asking and answering questions. So we have this whole parallel discussion going on in chat, which is great. I'm just would like to invite participants to fill in the polls, which are not being filled as fast as I would like. And while you are answering to the poll questions, I will introduce our last panelist. Her name is Marianne Eder. She's strategy and innovation lead at Vodafone Hungary. She has special focus on company's overall purpose and sustainability agenda. Vodafone is an IT company, so we would like to hear experience of high-tech companies in ESG practices and reporting. Vodafone has a long experience in reporting, and it seems that investors are asking for this kind of information more and more, even prior to this legislation prepared by the Commission. So, Marianne, share with us your experience, please.
Thank you very much for having me here. And yes, as you mentioned, Vodafone has a long history in sustainability reporting, if we can call it long. It's about 20 years now when the first sustainability report was published. And we've seen a growing interest from investors ever since. And if anything, clarifying the data and the metrics will only make things a bit easier to compare ourselves also in the market. So a clear and strict reporting structure is absolutely welcome and will make eventually our lives easier, not only helping to reach our sustainability goals and to avoid the many times mentioned greenwashing scenarios. So bringing companies to the same understanding and just to make it easier for stakeholders to evaluate our performance is something that we really appreciate and hopefully turn to our advantage. We would very much like to use it as a differentiation, as a space for growth. As Vodafone has been doing quite a lot in this sphere and plans to do much more in the future, for the last couple of years, purpose and building a digital, inclusive, and sustainable society has been in the center of our strategy. Hence, reporting will need to go hand in hand with this. The transparency will enable us to attract new investors, and just being hopefully an ESG leader will just help us evolve further in this space. Not only brings this opportunity as well, but of course challenges, which we also need to talk about. And as Vodafone operates in many markets, first of all, we need to reach the state where we have consistent and quality data, which is now based on this standard from all of our markets. And I'm happy to see we are on good track to reach this. Vodafone has an ESG subcommittee of the board to ensure the oversight and progress on all this. And some of these metrics are a bit more tangible than others. We normally use the sustainability metrics to give examples, like greenhouse gas emissions, etc., which are easier to understand, not only for investors, but also for customers. Yet when we get to social metrics, they sometimes require a bit more explanation. So I think in general, this will help overall all our stakeholders just to be able to compare and to make decisions for themselves. Optimizing reporting capabilities will also mean that we have to report many different directions. So this could bring us also a couple challenges, yet some of these indexes will keep using different methodologies, different metrics, different explanations to some of the terminology. And as mentioned before, there probably will be difficulties, but eventually we will get to using the same language everywhere. And Vodafone is very much in the forefront of joining forums to make sure that we're part of the conversation and that we make this hopefully brighter future a reality together. And we think the basis for this is just clearly having a science-based ESG strategy that is very much in line with the common understanding and reporting for the future.
Thank you.
Giving it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Since we are quite close to the end of our session, we only have time for some blitz questions. So let me ask Mr. Sabo, do you think that this new legislation will create additional cost for companies? If you can be brief, please.
Yes, for those who hasn't touched reporting, it's definitely will require additional resources and attention. But this is also one side of the coin. The other side is the benefits, which is trust and access to capital and so on. Just maybe one more thing that we work together with one of the leading financial institutions in Hungary, and we tried to translate the EU taxonomy and the DNSH criteria. And they just asked, okay, guys, but how can we have information from our portfolio members just to evaluate very simple things because this information are not available? So what's happening right now is that they identify the source of information, and if something is not available, they will definitely request this information, or will not prefer these types of clients to provide them with favorable conditions in case of loans, for example.
Thank you. Mr. Pauly, you talk to us as a bank representative, but you are also a company representative. Does your company does any activities trying to align with new environmental standards?
Yeah, so, of course, we adhere to all of the new reporting and disclosure requirements. But above and beyond that, we've made some very clear global commitments around what we are going to achieve. So we have committed to have our footprint be net zero by 2030 or sooner, and that includes our supply chain. We have committed to financing 750 billion to 1 trillion of sustainable investments by 2030 to help our customers transition to a less carbon intense future. We have committed to reduce our financed emissions from our portfolio to net zero by 2050 or sooner. And we've committed to phase out financing for the coal industry by 2030 in OECD and by 2040 worldwide. So we've made some very measurable, explicit and specific commitments to this. Oh, plus we've committed to dedicate 100 million to a venture fund to finance new tech. So I think that is how we're going to measure ourselves, and that's how we're going to measure success. And in addition to that, we are now currently reviewing our operating model to understand how we can deliver that effectively. So we're looking at training for our people. We're looking at our credit and our risk models and how they work in wholesale, retail, private banking. We're looking at our product suite, and then we're looking at our reg compliance. So we don't have all the answers, but we've not waited for that to make the commitments that we want to deliver, because we understand the challenge ahead and we want to be part of the solution.
Thank you so much. Merice, is there enough experts in your company, and if not in the company, on the market, who are capable of aligning companies with these new requirements?
Yes, I can say yes. Also, I want to add some information. For example, what is very interesting regarding the new reporting system, it means that it is the due diligence. I want to stress out some information regarding that. For example, in CEMEX Croatia, we have experience with due diligence so far. And I think that it would be good to harmonize this important system and define the general same methodology, because for each due diligence process in the company, according to my experience, it was a really long and demanding process. For that, I think that is very, very good and important to include due diligence process and harmonize, because for all due diligence activities in previous time, we had different methodology, which is very, very exhaustive, I can say. Also, according to my opinion, I can say that the biggest changes in the report on the management of the organization and its impacts, as well as the introduction of the new publications on responsible business management policy, is including respect of the human rights. I think that is very, very important to also harmonize methodology for that, because in different company you can see the different human rights methodology and how the company represent that. All of this means that the reporting organization will need to put it in a lot more efforts and provides a lot of more information on identifying their impacts, involving stakeholders in all process, and designing sustainability impact management strategies. It means I think that in this process, we need very, very strong rules and completely harmonized methodology. It will be easy and helpful for all of us.
Thank you. Thank you. Julia, are management boards ready for this transition?
Yes, I think they will need some support, of course. So I think we are going to intensify our induction and our information and proposal of discussion meetings, because as I told before, sustainability reporting is transformative. So we just don't have to report something. We have to manage topics to have good performances, and taxonomy regulation, I think it's a very good example. So we will need to support them in a transition. Of course, our management and our board understand very well the needs and what are we, yes, the importance of what are we asked to do. We have the challenge and the duty to support them with the right information and yes, to make the things clear and to give information to take their decisions.
Thank you. And finally, Marianne, is IT a tool, important tool to help companies become sustainable?
I think it is, absolutely. So when it comes to solutions that we offer to customers, that those be consumer customers or enterprise customers, sustainability will be an essential factor when it comes to what kind of help we can provide them. And essentially, this will be a tool to enable people to live a more sustainable life, maybe not in reporting, but in many other aspects in their business or their personal lives.
Thank you so much. And since we have reached the end of our session, I think you have all sent very important message to Mr. Berrigan and his colleagues at European Commission, because what I heard is that all the companies who were in this panel strongly support new legislation and strongly support implementation of sustainable processes. Thank you all so much. Thanks to all the participants, our keynote speakers, of course, and thank you all who watched and participate as participants in this panel. I hope that you got the information you hoped for and that it was interesting to you. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the SDG Summit. Goodbye.